Welcome to Nonsense Season 4, Episode 27, our big story, but not our second show of the week because CJ was busy feeding his children's schools, teachers, and staff.
A lot of possessives in there.
How nice of you. I'm Jeff Perk.
I'm CJ Little.
The feeder of
the feeder of the people. They would eat without me. They just get to eat something I think more delicious with me.
Probably something pretty amazing, right?
It was pretty good.
Teacher Appreciation Week at your school has to just be they've won the lottery.
32 pounds of 3 different beefs that I smoked and then braised for like a total of 12 hours. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Let's talk about that instead of this gambling thing.
That's pretty good.
This time we're looking at crystal balls and margin calls, how the internet gambles on the future, up next.
So I smoke it over oak and then
you do?
I braise it.
Oh.
My whole house smells like a beef emporium. It's kind of lovely.
Tell it slower.
Here's the thing.
Yes.
I'm very excited about this episode, first of all.
I know you are. You know lots about this. Let's just say this up front. You know lots about this, and I know almost nothing. So I'm excited to learn about this.
When you say how the internet gambles on the future,
yes.
I personally know how the domain name system works, and the entire future of the internet itself is a gamble. So we should start with that, because I'm not even sure it's going to stay working.
You giant nerd.
It's just, it's held together with like gum and tape.
Pretty much.
And a whole bunch of like hope.
And not a lot of redundancy.
That keeps the internet running. They're just like, well, this should work. And you're like, is that the right answer?
It's a little thing that was meant to exchange research papers.
I know, basically. I know, basically.
It was never meant to run the world.
And now there's trillions and trillions of dollars of market cap that are dependent on it.
All right, back to the topic at hand. The price of probability inside the prediction market craze. Let's go.
I predict this is going to go well.
I predict this is going to be a disaster.
Oh, all right. Those shares are a lot more expensive than my shares.
Prediction markets. This ain't just some backroom dice game. It's a high-stakes so-called truth machine. As they say, where there's real paper on the line, all that bias and cap goes out the window.
Who says that?
People. Oh. You got to watch where the heavy hitters are laying their stacks. They're forcing every loudmouth to put up or shut up on everything from global beefs to the next tech play. We're talking decentralized so-called wisdom where the price tells you exactly who's holding the winning hand in real time. In a world full of fakes, these markets have actual skin in the game. So stop listening to the noise and start tracking the trades. The bag, don't lie. Also, don't tell anyone. The number 5 is lucky.
Okay. I understand your position now.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think I get it. I feel like you put prediction markets into the same bucket that I put astrology. That's what I feel like you do. How close am I? Am I pretty close? Am I getting there?
You're close. I think astrology I might favor a little more.
Yes, yeah. My favorite Einstein quote,
Yeah.
There are two things that are infinite, the universe and human stupidity, and I'm not sure about the universe. Yeah.
Sure.
You're not wrong. I'm with you on that. I really am. Here's the thing. This is very early, right? What we're sort of referring to as the Polymarket effect is really in its like infant stages. I do think that its trajectory is pretty clear, and these markets are going to continue to expand.
Prediction markets trajectory is clear to you.
To me, I think so.
And you'd like to bet on that?
I would like to bet on that. This entire show should just be us placing bets and opening markets. I'm actually somewhat surprised, as we'll talk about, how far regulation has already come to sort of catch up and try to curb this.
Yeah.
There are still big gaps. We're nowhere near being close, but it is farther along than I would have expected. I would have bet against that.
You'll have to tell me about what that regulation is, because I don't know. Again, this is your area more than mine.
But I think now in the sort of the AI genie that we can't shove back into the bottle, you're going to see acceleration in this forecasting market. Like you're just going to see it continue to speed ahead. It's really going to change how we have to operate, especially in business, but even just in life, because the data is going to come so much faster. The information will come so much faster than we're used to before.
And you think what we're getting from prediction markets is actual data that we should base decisions on?
Yeah, it's got some noise in it for sure, but the signal looks like it's about as good as what we've known before. It's just coming much faster.
Okay.
And again, it's early days, so I suspect that will get better and not worse. So to me, this isn't gambling, right? This isn't a story about gambling.
Right.
It's about how you sort of form and extract truth in a decentralized, and I want to just reiterate, high speed environment. Like the speed is something that gets glossed over a lot, but it's so much like orders of magnitude faster than anything else that we've seen.
And to me, this is fun because to me, this is completely a story about gambling. 100% a story about gambling. I love these episodes where we come at this from two different angles.
Well, yeah, but if we were both right, that wouldn't be fun. So I appreciate that you take the other side of right, and you're more of the stare at the stars.
Listen, I love having these conversations with you because you are smart, and so I know eventually you'll see it my way.
This is going to be fun. And another thing about why Windows is great, it does seem like, at least, again, early days, that the ability to harness the masses, the sense of the masses, especially when you put something on the line, and that's what we're going to talk about here in a second, is more accurate than then a handful of experts. Not in everything. I want to be clear, not in everything.
Sure.
But in some things, it does seem to be more accurate. And I find that somewhat fascinating. And again, I don't think this is all dialed in yet, but man, for where we are in 2026 of being able to put some capital behind a decision, place what we would commonly refer to as a bet on an outcome, and then at scale, that can help you divine the truth. We could sit here for hours, I think, and go back and forth about your position versus the right position. But instead of doing that, what I think we should do is break this up into some chunks.
Sure.
You're not going to like any of them. I can already tell. We're going to break it up into 4 parts. The first being sort of what I'm thinking of as the mechanics, right? Why does the wisdom of the crowd, or why do we think the wisdom of the crowd works? What does that mean? And how do we structure that? Then there's what I'm calling the current implementation. So the rise of these event markets that have come to exist really in just the past handful of years.
Kalshi and Polymarket.
Polymarkets are the two big ones. Yeah. Then I want to talk a little bit about what I will just call the cheating, because there's a lot of cheating that we know about. And then there's a whole lot of cheating that we kind of don't know about, but kind of suspect.
I'm sure.
And then the performance. And I think that's the most exciting one, is to talk about how these things have done so far in its very sort of nascent life. How does that sound?
How the prediction markets have done. How have their outcomes been?
Compared only to astrology.
Okay, excellent.
They do great compared to astrology. Up 3%.
I'm looking forward to it.
Does that sound good?
That sounds great. Let's get started. Talk to me about the mechanics, the wisdom of the crowd. What is this all about?
So it's not, and I said this earlier sort of in jest, this isn't like crystal ball, I'm throwing a dart. It's more collective math, right? It's more looking at the masses and trying to figure out what the masses believe.
Let's explain that, because the masses actually are putting real money onto some position.
Yes.
Will this happen? Will this not happen?
Most all of these are set with specifically a binary outcome. You are betting on a yes or no question. And if the event happens, typically that contract is worth $1. And if it doesn't, it's worth $0, right? Just to keep it simple. That's the way these are implemented. So it makes it very easy. Now, this implies odds that are whatever the price is that you're betting. So if you're saying, if there's a contract that says, will a billionaire go to Mars this year? If that's trading at 34 cents, the market is collectively saying there's a 34% chance that it happens. And then if it doesn't, you're on the 66% side. The incentive is that you're not just giving your opinion, but you're buying a piece of the future. And that market will change, right? So if you think the chance is actually 50% of this billionaire going to Mars, and you buy at 34%, you've got arbitrage on that difference. That 16-cent difference is what you're effectively buying or potentially gaining. Does that make sense?
And this is different from gambling. This is different from just placing a bet on whether or not a billionaire goes to Mars, because this is a so-called event contract. It's like a swap.
Yes, it's an event contract, which
it's a financial derivative.
We could probably do a whole episode on let's just call it the pedanticsness of that.
Tell me what you mean by that.
Well, it's a bet, but all bets are on future outcomes. So I don't know. I feel like it gets a little gray in there. Like, yes, this is a swap on a future. It is a yes-no side, but that is in fact what we would classically call a bet.
It's 100% a bet. They literally call it bets in their ads.
Yes. I feel like there's a lot of legwork that goes into making, specifying the difference. But I'm like, what bet is not on a future outcome? You don't bet on past outcomes.
Sure.
That wouldn't make any sense.
But by calling it an event contract, it gets them around state taxes and age requirements.
Yes. And that makes it not gambling. But again, let's talk about roulette for a second.
Okay. Oh, I like this.
A ball gets dropped onto a wheel and lands on a number.
Yes.
That is a future outcome.
Of course, that's a future outcome.
That's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just going to leave that out there for a second.
So what you're saying is this is 100% gambling.
I'm saying this is 100% gambling. Yes. And I'm looking forward to the Polymarket Mafia coming up to my house later on today.
Sure.
There's a 100% chance of that.
This is bucket shops that are legal.
I don't know what a bucket shop is.
Oh my goodness. It was like in the early 20th centuries. They had these storefronts.
Yeah.
And customers could bet on stock price movements without actually owning the stocks.
I know they were called bucket shops. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, those exist now. There are just platforms where you can do exactly that.
This is basically a bucket shop.
No. Not basically. 100% is.
I don't know a better way to put this. This is a third-party derivative. In other words, I have no benefit from the outcome. I don't actually hold the stock.
Well, in theory.
This is not like corn futures where I'm a corn farmer and I'm selling my futures of corn so that I no longer have risk of no rain or too much rain or all of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
I'm betting on locking in a price.
That's a way to think of it. Sure.
That's a first-person derivative. A third-party derivative, it would be where I have no outcome. I'm just somebody who's betting on corn. By the way, in futures, eventually, if I sit around, a truck is going to pull up if I don't sell my futures in corn, and it's going to deliver corn to me.
Yes.
Because I am actually a first party to this bet.
Yes, exactly. That's why you want to get the Beeks report early and often.
Exactly.
So in order for this to work, this wisdom of the crowd to work, you need a handful of things. And this is James Surowiecki's, I think it's Polish. This comes from his wisdom of the crowds. In order for a crowd to be smarter than an expert, it needs three key things. The first thing you need is diversity. So you need a mix of the rocket scientist and the bored teenager and the industry insiders. You need all of them looking at the same problem from different angles. You need independence so that people aren't just following a leader, like some, TV pundit or someone who's sort of quote unquote leading the market. They need to make their own choices based on their own private info. And then you need decentralization so that there's no arbiter of the decision making. The answer emerges from the bottom up.
How do you cause that to happen on Kalshi and Polymarket? If I have a lot of money, how do I just not take a massive position on something to sway the entire market?
You can take a massive, you can. And you can try to move the market. But the point is the market will correct itself. That's the point here is that if somebody goes in and drops $10 million on a bet, everybody can go, well, I'm going to buy the other side of that. It's going to swing the numbers way to the favor of me buying the other side because there's so much cash on one side of the bet.
But that's not really how human herd mentality works. We all start to question our own logic and go, ooh, maybe that billionaire really will go to space this week.
But then guys like you that like to go the other way go, well, now I can buy these shares for half a cent. And I think this is an 85% outcome. So I'm in the money. And you go buy a bunch of them, right? And swing it the other way. That's how this is supposed to work.
Yeah, I don't do short-term things like that. But yes.
I understand, but that's the point, right? The point is if you believe in the other side and someone tries to move the market, now it's just made the people who have strong belief in the other side a better opportunity for them to move the market back. Okay, so you need those three things, right? And then one of the big differences about these, what I'll call the modern implementations of these event markets, so specifically Polymarkets and Kalshi, are that you have to put skin in the game. You have to actually put up some cash. You can't just give your position by saying, oh, I think this is going to happen because it makes you feel good or does some amount of virtue signaling. You actually have to make a bet.
Like the guys who are buying all those shares of GameStop.
Well, that's an interesting parallel and one that is harder for me to speak to because they have propped that up for a hell of a lot longer than I would have expected.
Buy and hodl.
Yeah, that's a whole separate show because why has that persisted for as long as it has? It doesn't fit for me, but somehow it has. Yeah. The belief is that by having skin in the game, you can filter out some of the noise because over time you're going to lose money to the people who No. So you're the smart money, the people with the best information end up having a louder voice in the price than the loudest people on whatever, the social media or the discussion board for it.
Sure.
So then you need some form of calibration, right? You need some sort of truth, some sort of arbiter of truth that isn't an individual, but is a consensus. That gets a little interesting, right? How these systems are decentralized so that you're not just getting a piece of news from a single news source, but you're instead getting
a truth engine to this.
Yes, some sort of truth engine. And I really do think that's an entire deep dive topic that I'm still trying to wrap my brain around how that works. But it's pretty awesome that you have these really fast resolution times and you incentivize people for the truth. And that seems to work.
You say fast, about 2 hours?
2 hours. Yeah, 2 hours in the ones that I've looked at. What I'd like to highlight is that if you go to a poll of someone, which is a more common, at least historically common metric for determining the outcome of something, you ask them what they think. They're going to say what they want to say, right? In polls, you hear what people say, but bets measure what they believe. There's a gap there, right? People don't say what they believe. There can absolutely be a gap.
Let me see if I can make that a little clearer. When you have a poll, like, are you going to vote for Donald Trump? What you're going to get is a number of people that shows that Donald Trump is going to win by 1% or whatever that poll outcome is going to be.
Sure.
When you have a Kalshi-like thing, will Donald Trump win? What you have is, by what percentage of the people betting do you think Donald Trump will win? Well, you're actually getting an odds. You're not getting a rating of how he will do in the vote. You're getting a likelihood of him getting that 61% or 51%.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. People are betting on it, not just taking account and then extrapolating from that.
So it's a very different thing than a poll.
I want to be very specific here. A typical political poll, yes, would work exactly that way. I'm saying if you poll people and ask them who's going to win, not how they voted, there's a difference. I'm specifically comparing those two. People are going to tell you not what they believe, right? They're going to tell you what they want to say. Money is where the belief comes. There is a difference. So those two are comparative. It's not what they're voting, but it's you actually saying, what do you think is going to happen, right? What they say is different than what they believe. That's the point that I'm trying to make. Does that make sense? You sort of, when you put the capitalistic element into this, people all of a sudden start to be a little more truthful and honest.
Cautious, yeah.
I'm not cautious. I'd say just say honest.
The guy who ran Lehman Brothers before it went bankrupt had 99% of his net worth in Lehman Brothers.
Oopsies.
And he had all of his belief that they were going to pull out of this.
Sure.
So people do bet completely the wrong way in aggressive ways. It does happen.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't make them more or less right.
No, but this is the part you don't get. You need the diversity of people. That's how you ultimately get it, right? How many people bet against against Lehman at the time. I don't even think that's a fair comparison, but
Yeah.
more than one. Certainly it wasn't just him.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So that's the difference, is that you now have the money keeps people from just clicking on what they feel is right. Like you need some sort of currency. In this particular case, we're using capital.
Skin in the game, as you say.
In others, they use reputation, right? There are some of these markets that don't use cash. They use reputation. Over time, as you build up a reputation, now that becomes valuable to you. So now you don't want to risk that. In this case, we're just using cash. I think it's the easier one to understand. Now you get this like level of discipline that you just don't see typically in public life, because in public, you're putting on some performance, especially on social media. You're trying to signal some part of your identity. And when you look behind the curtains, in many cases, what they're placing bets on do not align with what they're trying to signal.
Without money in the game, sometimes you're betting on what you hope, not necessarily what you think.
Or what you want other people to see, right? I think that's another part that you and I it doesn't resonate with you and I, is folks are like, well, I'm going to pretend that I'm this person. It's like you and I just kind of say what we believe. In a prediction market, you are incentivized to be accurate. You only win if you're accurate.
Okay.
Noise is arguably punished. Whereas online, you can be noisy all you want. On social media, no one cares. Actually, arguably noisy is better.
Yeah.
Better for you to be noisy if your goal is to get more people to listen to you. The wishful thinking in prediction markets doesn't go very long. You're not going to last very long there, at least not with a good return.
Same with a sports book, though. You're putting money down on a team in a sports book. Same sort of thing. You're betting against the house. Here, you're betting against another human, right?
No, in a sports book, arguably you're betting against the other side of the bet. If the book is run correctly, you're betting against the other side of the bet. I think those are pretty analogous.
Okay.
Because the house isn't taking a position. In theory, the house made a market and then they try to balance the bets so that you're on one side or the other.
Well, the house is taking a 4% VIG, or
they're taking VIG,
14%,
10% in many
whatever
cases.
they want.
Yeah.
In the case of the prediction markets, it's a 1% VIG.
As the market moves, there's reasons why you can't keep it balanced. But if you can keep it balanced in a sports book, you always make money as the house.
Sure.
Always. But if it's unbalanced, then that's when you can actually lose money. And then a rake comes out.
Is there someone actually on a very small scale making markets where they're covering gaps so that there is a market?
Yeah.
You know what a market maker is? I buy a few shares just so that there's a bid and ask that we've established.
Yeah, I don't know how that works on these. I suspect there is some form of market making, but I also don't know if you don't get a market when it just falls off. There's no cost to it. So I think it just falls off. But I don't know. That's a really good question.
Okay.
Let's talk about like the event market, the implementation of these things, sort of how this has happened. And this isn't new. A lot of people that I've talked to think this is like some side effect of crypto, and it's not, right? We've had these for a long time. And even before we had what I will call sort of scientific polling, we had early forms of prediction markets that existed usually in the form of political betting. One of these dates back to the early 1500s, where people bet on who would be the next sort of papal successor. And even then it was already considered a quote old practice.
Yeah.
It's not like this is new, right? This has been around for a while.
But the part that comes from cryptocurrency is that Polymarket is based on the Polygon blockchain, which is sort of derived from the blockchain that you use in cryptocurrency.
Yeah. I'm just saying these didn't come from crypto. Crypto is an implementation of. I'd argue a very good implementation of this, because now you've got some visibility into what's happened. It's also the way they use the truth machine to sort of lock in what the answer is in a version of the blockchain. My point is these existed before that. This sort of enabled it. Could you have done this as well without blockchain? Probably not.
Right. You're standing on the shoulders of cryptocurrency.
Yeah, that's a good way to think of it.
In a way, because there is a distributed ledger.
Romans were obsessed with betting on who would be the next pope. You mentioned the Wall Street bets of I think it was like the late 1800s, right? Where you would sort of bet on stocks without actually owning the stock.
The bucket shops.
The real sort of what I'll call like intellectual big bang for prediction markets happened in the 1940s. And that was from the Nobel Prize winning economist Friedrich Hayek, who argued that the most important information in society is truly dispersed. It's dispersed across many, so that no one person knows everything, but the market price acts as a giant vacuum, sucking up all those little pieces of secret information and turning them to one single accurate number, right? One single signal. That was his theory. It does start to move your focus from like just listening to the one or two smartest people in the room and looking at what the whole market is saying.
Everybody gets a voice.
The precursor for the modern Polymarkets and Kalshis was what we call the Iowa experiment. So this was in the late 80s, and this was the Iowa electronic markets. So the University of Iowa professors were annoyed that pollsters didn't see Jesse Jackson's 1988 success coming. So they launched a political stock market as just a small academic experiment. And it worked. For decades, IEM's market prices were more accurate than professional polls about 75% of the time.
And the federal government turned a blind eye to this trading just because they thought it was research.
Yeah, they put it under the guise of research, which it was. I mean, there wasn't anyone like really making money on this. It wasn't like it had been
Small
commercialized.
amounts of money.
Yeah.
They were limited in what they could bet.
Yes. And it proved that people are much more honest when they have to put up $5 instead of just answering a phone survey. So that was like the first modern example of this working. There were some not great examples of this. This was one that I've been very very vague recollection of, but didn't really know the details of. In early 2000s, 2003, there was a professor named Robin Hanson who worked with the Pentagon to create a market where people could bet on things like coups and terrorist attacks in the Middle East. And politicians just hated it. It got really bad press. I think people didn't fully understand it. They called it sick and grotesque. The project was shut down 24 hours after it was sort of disclosed or made available.
Sure.
And the prediction markets were sent like just into the dark ages of regulation. They were just completely set aside for 2 decades.
It's pretty dark.
Well, yeah. I mean, it is and it isn't.
It brings up an interesting point, though.
Yeah.
Imagine I'm like an Israeli pilot, and I'm flying over. I know I'm been ordered to go drop bombs on Lebanon. I pull up my phone very quickly before I drop my bombs, and I make a nice big bet on Kalshi that there's going to be a bomb dropped on Lebanon within the next 2 hours. And I bet all the money I own because I'm going to go drop that bomb.
Yeah.
The rest of the world doesn't know that.
Yeah.
So information there is not distributed.
Well, this is the now you're getting like what I think of as insider trading, right?
That would be pretty inside.
I wanted to at least cover some of these markets before we jump into that. Like
okay.
Just because like we've talked about Kalshi and Polymarket, so those are the ones that most people know. They've got different positions. They sort of focus on different things, but for the most part, those are the big ones. There are many others. There's a sort of newcomer that's owned by Crypto.com that's been focused on margin trading. They've been allowing you to like ratchet up margin to bet on anything from sports to politics or to culture.
Fabulous. So people can borrow a lot of money for their
Yes,
betting.
exactly. So you can borrow the money you're going to lose.
What a great idea.
There's still some academic focused ones. Predicted is one. Metacalculus is one. I find those to be even more interesting. And then you've got all sorts of underlying infrastructure that are starting to aggregate these, which I find fascinating, specifically for finance and for others. So my point is, it's not just Kalshi and Polymarkets. There are many others that have moved into this space. I don't think they're all going to survive. I think you end up with a handful of players in different sections.
Sure.
But there's a lot. The big takeaway for me from this is like the information is moving a lot faster, and I see no world in which it slows down.
And so there'll be more betting on it.
No, you just get signal much faster. You can't wait for a survey. You'll be so far behind. I'm just thinking like if you're making decisions, if you're an executive at your corporation.
Well, this is a survey. You just happen to have money at stake.
But my point is that the information is coming at you much faster than waiting 3 weeks for a Bloomberg survey to complete.
Sure.
Like you get real signal, valuable signal well ahead of that.
By the way, both Polymarket and Kalshi bet that the Chiefs would win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, sports betting.
Sports betting.
Get out of sports betting for a minute.
But back up a second. You know how much of sports betting Kalshi's trade volume is?
Oh, it started as a lot.
It's 90% of what they do.
Currently, I think it's less than that. I think it started out as that.
And FanDuel is the sports betting platform. Kalshi is considered not the sports betting platform, yet 90% of their betting, of their trade volume.
I know it started that way. When is that?
Court filings, regulatory disclosures, and third-party data analytics says 90% of trading volume on Kalshi is betting on sports.
I mean, it looks like as of currently, they're still north of 88%. So as of April, you're still seeing about 77% for April was sports related. So it's still pretty high, still higher than I thought.
You do have to ask yourself, why do state gambling laws not apply here instead of CFTC oversight?
That's to me, what's the difference? Regular gambling, what's the difference? You drop a ball onto a roulette table. It's a future outcome. What's the difference? It's a probability-based future outcome.
By the way, I was never in favor of swaps becoming legal.
Sure.
Just to really show you how far back I go.
Yeah. So now you're into insider trading land.
You're saying there's insider trading going on in the prediction markets?
None at all.
Yeah.
This is all above board. Everything here is great. Everything here is perfect. See, this is where it gets really interesting. I no longer know what is insider trading and what isn't. It was always had some element of blurriness to me, and now it just has even more.
Sometimes I can affect the outcome. I mean, like those people who were throwing dildos on the WNBA court.
Yes.
And now that because this market exists,
Number of dildos thrown on the court.
yeah, the odds of a dildo being thrown on a WNBA court, I now can affect that outcome.
Yes.
I can now go throw a dildo and make that pay off, so I can bet really big, of course.
That's what's so interesting to me about these things. It's like, even before you get to prediction markets, if you just think about what we call classic, non-betting stock markets, you go, well, okay, it's pretty clear what insider trading is. You have information that's not publicly available. That's insider trading.
Yeah,
and then you realize what percentage of large trades are being made with insider information. You just can't connect the dots as easily. Somebody hears from somebody from another source. They got a guy who knows a thing and know this is coming. And maybe you don't have a direct line, but you got a dotted line to a thing. That's still insider trading, right? And what percentage of that does not get dealt with in a civil or criminal manner? 99.999%?
Huge percentage of it.
Right?
Huge percentage of it.
Virtually
By the way,
all of it.
When it has gotten dealt with in the case of stock market manipulation from insider trading, a lot of times they get busted on the little bit that they can get busted on.
Yes.
But the other billions they've made, they get to keep because they didn't get, nobody proved that other
You can't prove it.
percentage. Yeah.
In a capitalistic world, who's supposed to keep them honest? They're not incentivized to stay honest. honest, especially if you can't prove it. How does that work? You expect them to be like, well, I have this information, I shouldn't trade on it. Super tough.
Yeah.
If I take that view and look at prediction markets, I'm like, man, I could argue prediction markets are more regulated than what you see in the stock market.
You have the exact same problem. I literally can, in many cases, I can cause the outcome. I can go streaking on the Super Bowl grounds, and I can win my bet because I caused the event to happen.
Yeah, but you've got more visibility into who placed the bet. That you don't have as much visibility to who placed the bet in the financial markets.
Oh, that's not true. We end up busting these people.
I'm saying as a percentage of trades made and bets placed, I suspect you probably have very little regulation and enforcement in prediction markets, more as a percentage played than in the non-prediction markets, in the financial markets.
Maybe, I don't know.
We sort of think of insider trading into a couple buckets. You've got the folks who can manipulate the market, which are the ones that the puppet masters, the market manipulators. And if you can influence the outcome, if you can throw the dildo onto the court, right, then you shouldn't be allowed to bet on it. Most folks, except for the folks who are actually doing it, would agree that that's good.
Let's say I'm the guy who throws a dildo on the court and I don't actually bet on it, but I tell all my friends, you should bet on me throwing a dildo out on the court.
Well, that would be the next bucket, right? That's where you have information.
How do I connect those dots? That's going to get a lot tougher.
But you have that same problem now in financial markets. You can't connect those dots.
I do. I'm not saying that's any better. That's the same. It's the same problem.
Right. Same with like you mentioned earlier, the leaks, right? We're prosecuting a guy right now because he was part of the armed forces that went into Venezuela, and he placed a bet before he went in on exactly when this was going to happen and got paid out. So he leaked classified information effectively by placing this bet.
Sure.
He didn't say that he had inside information of it. But what I think is we're going after, like in this particular case, we're going after this guy who placed a bet on when we were going to not invade, but go into Venezuela to remove the people that were in power. And that's pretty bad, right? I think as leak of classified information, it's pretty bad. But then you look at some of the other bets that have been placed on large market moving situations, that information had to come from the top. And we're not prosecuting any of those folks, at least not yet.
Yeah, of course.
And that to me is the bigger problem. Like, people should go to prison for this. I think we're just going to put the wrong people in prison for it, at least to start. We'll see if that changes.
Absolutely true of financial markets as well.
It does seem like, and I am, let's just say, less than cautiously optimistic, there's going to be continued analysis and productization around catching these folks because it's not in the market's best interest to catch them, right? It's in the market's best interest for them to exist.
Ignore.
They make, exactly. Just like the financial markets, you make money on volume, so you want more volume. So I'm just like, are you really incentivized to catch these folks? Like, isn't that the point of regulation?
Who would catch them? Who is going to catch them? The CFTC? Never going to happen. Michael Selig, the chairman of the CFTC? I mean, there's no way. He's a big Trumper, and the Trumpers are in this thing 100%. I mean, look at Donald Trump Jr. is both an unpaid advisor and an investor in Polymarket, and he's also a paid advisor to Kalshi. So there's no way these people are going to be regulated in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. You would hope that they would self-regulate. That's not going to happen.
That's never going to happen.
I mean, Polymarket has worked with some blockchain investigators to try to find on-chain data.
Yeah.
But again, why would they be incentivized to do this?
Yeah.
I get that you want the platform to be viewed as trustworthy, but everybody thinks they've got an edge, or that they want to be able to execute on their edge when they have an edge. Like, I really don't know what the answer for this is going to be on insider trading. I do think it's going to require a lot of data sharing, right? MLB has started doing this with the CFTC to ensure that players aren't using their inside knowledge of injuries to bet on these betting platforms. I think that's what has to happen. So the more visibility you have into that data, the better. And that's why I do think the prediction markets are different than the financial markets, is you have more visibility into the data. You really do.
You mentioned that
a couple times. Let's talk about the good stuff.
There's good stuff. What?
So how have these markets performed?
Yes.
Because I do think that is the most important question, is to see specifically how they performed on things.
How accurate have they been?
So I've got a couple.
Okay.
In the 2024 U.S. election, traditional polls leading up to the election were showing a coin flip, and right up until the end. Meanwhile, Polymarket was consistently leaning towards the eventual winner, often by a margin of 58% to 42%.
Again, because polling is not the same thing as prediction markets.
In this cherry-picked case, it ended up being more accurate.
It wasn't more accurate.
It was.
Because the polls still had them within the margin of error. So the polling was accurate. They're two different things.
So you're saying the polling doesn't do a good job of telling you the outcome?
The polling isn't telling you the outcome.
Okay.
You don't have enough resolution.
But we use polling to tell the outcome.
When you don't have the resolution, it looks like you have an answer when you say 51-49. You do not. You don't have the resolution.
So in this particular case, polling did not accurately determine the outcome of the vote.
Polling exactly captured the outcome of the vote. Polling said, we can't tell from our polling who's leading.
Did it work or did it not work?
It worked 100% because it said, here's the resolution we have, and that's a statistical tie.
Turns out Polymarket data actually looked to be pretty good at predicting the outcome of that election. I'm saying polling couldn't tell you the answer.
That's correct.
That to me is getting it wrong.
That is correct. That's the correct way to say it.
It didn't give you the answer. It got it wrong.
It didn't get it wrong. You got it right.
If the question posed to polling is, who is going to win the election? And the answer is, I don't know. Is that the right answer or is that the wrong answer?
That is a correct answer. Sure. I don't know is a correct answer.
I understand that it did its job within how it was defined.
It did its job exactly as it was designed.
But it didn't get the outcome. It didn't get the answer.
Sure.
My point is that in this particular case, it didn't give us the answer, which is what we were asking it to do.
Yeah.
To me, the natural conclusion is this is another way to determine an outcome of an event. So do we think it's going to be more likely to be right in the future or wrong? That to me is the interesting part. Like,
I don't know, because they've been wrong a lot. Take a look at the Republican supermajority we're supposed to get in the Congress, according to Kalshi and Polymarket. That didn't happen at all. And they bet strongly that that would happen. Take a look at Ken Paxton, who had an 83% chance of winning. Didn't happen. It's wrong a lot.
I also just hate, like, politics and sports, I think, are the worst things to put through this. But then I question...
This is all sports, though.
But that's the thing. That's what I question is, like, is that really what all this is? Like, at the end of the day, is it all just sports? Big gap politics. Is that like 98% of it?
It's the vast majority of it is sports, yeah. They try really hard to promote themselves as oracles of the truth.
Yeah.
And really, it's sports book gambling. It's not really any difference. I don't see any difference anyway.
God, that's got to piss off those guys so bad. The sports books guys so bad, right? Because they fall under, this is what you're saying earlier, they fall under state regulation.
Yeah.
So there's like states like California where they're like, you can't play.
As they should.
Because California says no to sports betting.
Absolutely.
But then these guys are like, no.
Yeah.
It's a future event.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's a swap.
By the way, the swaps should never have been allowed to be legal either.
Like, I didn't know until you said, I didn't know Kalshi was 90%. I read that.
That's the core.
As like a before thing, not as a current thing. It's the vast majority of their garbage. They had led me to believe that it was like 25%. I was like, okay, well, a lot of sports. No, not even close. Not even close. The vast majority of their platform is sports betting. Still, as of today.
Sure.
Well, yeah, but we gloss over that. I'm like, well, why don't you go sports bet elsewhere? Well, the reason you want sports bet elsewhere is because they are regulated by states. And in many states,
yes,
you can't bet. Now, there are some differences that are not obvious, but I do think are mildly important. So like with a sports book, you have the house effectively makes the odds. The house is setting the odds and they're moving the line.
Based upon the bets they receive.
Yes. Typically based on how much action they have on one side or the other.
Sure.
In the prediction markets, there's no house.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
You're just trading shares with other users.
It's a clearinghouse.
So if you buy a yes share, it's because another user is willing to sell you it at that price. And the price represents this sort of implied probability.
Sure.
I think that is a significant difference, but at the end of the day, same effect at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
I also think it's interesting that the event markets do have a clear juice. They're showing you the VIG, they're showing you the fee, whereas with most sports books, it's just sort of historically hidden. Why?
Is that right?
Well, it's implied in the odds, right? You have to calculate it in the odds.
Right.
If you're decent at math, you can figure it out pretty easily, but it's hidden in the odds.
Yeah.
That is a difference, right? I mean, you can figure it out because you're paying 110 to get 100.
Doesn't seem like hard math.
To me, it's still a rate, but it's a transaction fee. We pay transaction fees everywhere, right? You process a credit card, you pay a transaction fee.
But even though if it's just 1%, it's no different than if it's 5%. It means in aggregate, we all lose money.
Yes, of course.
Because of the frictional cost of this thing.
Yes, of course. But at least it's visible, right? And I can appreciate that difference. I mean, that's why Kalshi and Polymarket's volume is so high in sports betting. It's because you have like California and Texas.
It's cheaper gambling. Oh yeah, you get the big states too.
You get the big states. You get the states where there's technically sports betting is illegal.
Yeah.
Now everybody sort of floods in.
The vast majority of players on Kalshi and Polymarket lose money.
Well, I think it's even before you get to the insider trading, but let's come back. Yeah, let's come back to that. There's another point that is interesting. I don't think this makes up a large part of their volume, but I just want to point out between sports betting and non-sports betting in events or whatever you want to call sports betting in these event markets is the age difference. If you're sports betting, that's gambling, and usually that's going to be a 21 year or older
majority age, right?
Minimum. To play in these event markets is usually 18 or over. You just have to be an adult.
Okay.
I don't think it makes a big difference, but it is a difference.
You get more idiots, and the younger they are, the more idiot they are.
I don't know. I've gotten dumber with age.
That's true. That's true.
I'm not sure about that particular thing. There is one thing that stood out, and I want you to take this with a grain of salt.
Okay.
But because I'm just, I don't know which way is up anymore. Sky is blue, sky is green. I have no idea.
Okay.
There was a Federal Reserve study this year, 2026, that compared Kalshi, so one of these event markets, to professional economic forecasters regarding things like interest rate hikes and inflation.
Yeah.
The market's mean absolute error was statistically identical to the pros.
Sure.
That kind of caught my eye a little bit.
Sure.
Because at first I'm like, oh, well, they're equally as uninformed
as idiotic
as the pros.
Yes.
Yeah. That was kind of my first takeaway.
Which is true. That's 100% right.
But is that really the answer?
That is the absolute correct thing. But so many economists, they're just making things up. Selling may and go away. I mean, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
I want to agree with you on this, but I want to offer one potential difference.
Yeah.
The market gets there, the event market gets there faster.
Well, sure.
Right? So wait, hold on. If you're going to forget about the fact that the consensus
You can
is
lose money faster. That's true.
no, not necessarily. You at least know what the market's position is faster, right?
Sure.
That could be valuable. If you have a thesis and you want to bet against it, you know where it's going to get faster.
Yeah, I'm not betting on the wisdom of the crowd for
And
sure.
you could bet against
Think
it.
about this. This is crazy. More than 2/3 of all the money that was won on Polymarket was won by 740 accounts.
Wow. Okay. That is an argument for what? Out of how many people? It's not 749 accounts, Jeff. It's a lot
more than that. Yes,
yeah,
it's a
lot more than that.
I can put it in percentage terms. It's something like less than 15% of users on Polymarket were actually in the black.
Oh, I would have guessed the number even less than that. You're just a rube.
It's a rube's game.
Yeah.
Gambling is a tax on people who are bad at math.
I mean, this is the joke, is that if you're in a room playing poker and you don't know who the mark is, it's you.
You're the one.
That's the answer. I think grifters say that too. I'm just saying, Polymarkets and Kalshi are going to answer all of our questions about the unknown, about the universe, everything. The hive mind knowledge will tell us all of the things. We don't even need science anymore. We can just give up on science and math.
Excellent. Fantastic.
But at the end of the day, the fact that it's all sports betting just makes me sad.
I'm sorry.
Why?
Why am I sorry?
No. Why is sports betting the thing?
I think people care about sports betting. I couldn't tell you why.
Well, they care about sports, right? I mean, I think that's the thing. They care about sports. That's why they do it.
I'm about to care a lot less about NBA basketball for a few months.
Why? They going to lose?
I don't think the odds are good.
Lakers are trading at 15 cents right now. It doesn't look great.
Shh. All right, we have to get out of here, but quickly before we do, have you seen or read anything good this last week?
Not to mention my current dismal state of affairs with prediction markets. But if you're like me and you just think that the entire world's economy is just a giant Jenga tower that's held together with Scotch tape and delusions, then Michael Lewis's The Big Short from 2010 is the book that you should read.
Oh, it's great.
It's a great book.
Oh, yeah, the book. Yeah. I thought you were talking about the movie, but yes.
I've actually never seen. I don't think I've ever seen the film.
Oh, it's good. It's really good.
I loved the book, so I can flex on that. But if you are unfamiliar with Michael Lewis, which I don't know how that's possible, it's the ultimate sort of I told you so story, right? It follows a handful of social misfits and math nerds who realized the global housing market was a house of cards long before the first brick fell.
Sure.
And instead of trying to save the world, which I guess some people might try to do, they did the most prediction market thing possible. They placed a massive bet against the entire system.
But everybody knows that housing prices are never going to go down.
Right? Ever. Except it turns out they are. And I thought Lewis did a great job of turning what was relatively dry financial jargon into this like high stakes thriller, this heist.
Yeah.
And I don't think you need to know the first thing about subprime tranches to enjoy the sheer absurdity of the characters, like a one-eyed hedge fund manager who plays heavy metal drums to blow off steam. Like he brought in these great aspects of the characters that were really awesome. It's hilarious. It's infuriating.
Michael Burry is an interesting guy.
Burry, I still follow him.
Quite literally did not see things the way everyone else sees them.
Literally has a different view in a literal and figurative sense. But it's a fast-paced look at what happened when the experts are wrong and the people are willing to bet on the unthinkable end up sort of winning it all. Yeah. And my favorite part of the story, not to give it away, is when the guys from Goldman came to try to buy back his side of the trade. They're like, we would love to pay you back on these. And he was like, hard no.
Of course, hard no.
Like, what do you think I've been doing for the last, 5 years he was sitting on him?
Sure.
But I haven't seen the movie. According to Jeff, it's pretty good. But the book I can strongly adore. So how about you? What have you seen?
My rec is 1995's Leaving Las Vegas, which just had a gorgeous 4K restoration.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, really beautiful. In the neon-soaked purgatory of the Strip, Ben Sanderson, played by Nicolas Cage, who won the Best Actor Oscar for it, isn't looking for a jackpot. He's looking for an exit. After torching his career and family, he heads to Las Vegas with a severance check and a singular goal, drinking himself to death. Alongside Sarah, played by Elizabeth Shue, who was nominated for an Oscar for it, a sex worker trapped in her own cycle of exploitation, this becomes the ultimate loser anthem. The film strips away the glitz to reveal the city's hollow core. There are no high-stakes wins, only the quiet mechanical rot of the 4 a.m. lifestyle, where dignity is traded for a cheap high. Vegas acts as the perfect graveyard, a place designed to facilitate the total collapse of a human life. Such an amazing movie. Leaving Las Vegas, available on all the usual streamers now.
I don't think I've ever seen the entirety of that film, just part.
It's so good. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
Nicolas Cage is amazing in this film.
All right, I'm going to have to check that out.
That is the episode.
Thank you for joining us for all this nonsense. A truly terrible podcast from The Awful Company. Visit us on the web at nonsense.productions. I'm CJ Little.
I'm Jeff Parker.
If you like this program, please follow, download, subscribe, and like at Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Amazon Music, AntennaPod, iHeartRadio, Spotify, my favorite Overcast, wherever you may get your podcasts from.
Nonsense is initially recorded using Audacity, 32-bit float recording for the highest quality sound. Audacity, like 95% of everything we use at Nonsense, is free and open source. If you need to make high-quality recordings, check out Audacity.
We'll be here every Tuesday and Thursday morning in 32-bit float for more nonsense. Please join us. was gross.
What's gross?
This whole thing, these markets, the way they came up.
Were you thinking generally gambling markets came up in some way that was delightful?